Welcome back to my channel, and this is video number 6 in a series about intuition by design. Intuition is a very central component of human design. It's one of the reasons I love human design, is it helps us to understand so many different aspects of our intuition. And we are all intuitive, and we're intuitive in different ways. And unfortunately, a lot of times we've been conditioned away from our intuitive knowing, away from our own inner guidance, our own body wisdom. And so human design helps us come back and reclaim and then also build the capacity of the different parts of our intuition. And it is my belief, and I don't think it's only mine, that intuition is one of the key things that we need here on planet Earth right now. We've been living in a highly logical left brain society for a long time, and we need to balance that out, and we need to be bringing in different kinds of insights and awarenesses and possibilities that are not logical. They're not rational. They're not reasonable. They're not that kind of information, and yet they're highly valuable information. So today we're going to get to talk about one of my favorite parts of the human design system, which is called the sensing circuit, or the miracle circuit in quantum human design. And it has to do with right-brained energy. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. The sensing circuit, or the miracle circuit, is part of collective circuitry. There are 3 main circuits in the human design system. There's individual circuitry, and the video that we did in this series on the knowing circuit is all about individual circuitry. Then there's tribal circuitry, which is about how we relate to each other. A lot of it has to do with our relationships. And then the collective circuits, which are the logic circuit and the sensing circuit. So it's left brain and right brain energies. And the collective circuitry is really being able to adopt and then expand and popularize and send out into the world the best of the mutations and the new ideas and the really out-of-the-box possibilities that come in through individual circuitry, particularly through that knowing circuit. And then the tribal energy, those of us in our relationships, we're checking out, is this new idea really helpful? Is this really a breakthrough idea that's working for me? And so in our relationships, we are checking out the mutations to see which ones are actually really helpful. And then the collective circuitry takes that and, like I said, kind of sends it out. And it is the energy for kind of our global situation, or any situation that exceeds kind of our relationships. Okay, so institutions, organizations, big companies, for example, all of that is going to be more in collective circuitry, because it exceeds kind of our ability to have relationships among all of the different parts of one of those entities. So this is where we have like infrastructure, like government, okay, or like things for, city planning, or for road construction, things like that. Like when they built the railroads, that was more collective energy. Things that are going on with airplanes, right? Mass transit, that's more collective energy. Different parts of our world that serve and support all of the tribes, right? Kind of support something that is a larger. But it's not just those kind of material or physical things, because it's also big ideas and new perspectives and vision for the collective, and imagining what's possible beyond what you've been taught or what you've already known before, because imagination is here. And the passion that gives us the fuel to be able to stay with a vision, for example, something that we imagine, and carrying it through. That's all here. And that's supported with energy for breaking patterns of the past and being able to step into new possibilities, really kind of on the leading edge of consciousness. There is a little bit of a resonance here for the way that the knowing circuit does that, because it is, these are both like energies that are coming in and connected to super consciousness right here through the knowing circuit, and over here through the sensing circuit. So they have a certain kind of resonance with each other. But what's coming through the sensing circuit is, like I said, it's more of the kind of big ideas, and it's very right-brained energy. So right-brained energy is creative, it's expansive, it's experiential, it's embodied, it is imaginative, it's expansive in the sense of our ability to move really outside of our perception of ourselves as just one physical being into an awareness of us in the quantum field or in the unified field, or what we say in the yoga traditions is the womb of life, the great womb of life. And so it's that piece. And if you're interested in this kind of conversation around right brain and left brain energies, you might want to check out Whole Brain Living by Jill Bolte Taylor, who is a neuroanatomist and who has some very, very interesting insights to bring through with us. But one of the things that she mentions is that it's in that right brain energy. It's kind of where we try to get to when we meditate, right? It's like this place of, the connection with the all that is, where we know that we are not separate from each other and we're not separate from, our world, and we're actually all connected through the web of life. And so that's all right brain energy. It's also embodied. It has to do with like our body wisdom, our felt sense. I'm not a person who sees. I'm not a visual person. I'm very auditory, so I hear, and that's my individual circuitry. But then I also have this body wisdom that I've developed over many years. And I feel things a lot. I'm very kinesthetic in that way, very somatic. And I want to make a note here. I just always want to bring this up, that you have all of the chart, okay, in your energy field. You have every gate, every channel, every center, whether it's colored in, defined, or whether it's open and undefined, okay, or white. And the reason I want to say this is I only have one gate in all of the sensing circuit defined in my chart. Only one, okay? And yet I have a very deep affinity for the energy of this, what's going through the sensing circuit. And it's something that I have been drawn to, but I've also cultivated and spent quite a bit of time over the course of my life building my capacity in the sensing circuit. So I want you to know that it doesn't matter in certain ways what you have defined and what you don't. I do suggest that you go and see what is colored in, and go check that out, get the specifics of that, because that is energy that you're going to have ongoing, ready, reliable access to it, and a consistent, even fixed way of experiencing it. Now, when I say fixed, I don't mean you can't change it, but I do mean that it's something that is kind of embedded in you. Okay. Whereas what's open is going to vary, but you will have experienced it many, many, thousands of times, depending on who you've been around during the course of your life. And I know for me, having put myself in situations where I was really learning about body wisdom, I was learning about somatic awareness, I was learning about being able to tune into that felt sense, and also be able to tune into my own energy field, and outside of my energy field into the all that is, or the creative intelligence, or dark matter, any of those things, right? I mean, but I had to really learn how to do that. It wasn't something that I felt was really gifted to me in the way that some of my definition is. But even so, it's a huge part of how I experience myself now. So I don't want you to think, if you don't have a lot of the sensing circuit or what I talk about in any of these videos, if it's not defined in your chart, it doesn't mean that you don't have it. You do have it. It just means you have a variable way of experiencing it, and you potentially can change it and develop it maybe easier than you can with some of your definition. Okay, that's a whole nother lesson. But I wanted to just say this here, because sometimes people really say, oh, I'm not intuitive, I'm not creative, I'm not really a creative person. And what they think that means is, I don't paint or something, or I don't, work in clay or whatever. And I just want to say we're all intuitive and we're all creative. And I know that you're creative because you can't not create. It's part of your experience here as a human being, co-creating with the flow of life. So it's pillar number 1 of feminine sovereignty is co-creating with the flow of life, right? And purposefully doing that. So you are creative, absolutely. And you may have creative capacities that you've never developed in yourself. Like for me, like with this painting, like I never knew I could do that until I was in my 40s, right? And I never even tried after I was a kid. I stopped. But then I had the great good fortune to meet Shiloh Sophia McLeod and to work with her. And she really helped open up my whole sense of what was possible for me in terms of two-dimensional painting creativity. And it's also much bigger than just putting an image on a page. It's about opening up to all of what can come in, all the information that the creative intelligence has for me or for my own soul essence for me. So I just want to underscore for you that you are a creative being and that you have your own information. You just may have been conditioned away from it and more into left brain intelligence, more didactic, or, Western culture really privileges these things, right? That's why we learn arithmetic and have to take math all the way through school, even until you get math that you're never going to use again. I mean, I did multi-vector calculus when I was in college, and unless you become a physicist, I don't really know what you're ever going to use that for. So, side note. So having said that, I do want to note that imagination, right, our ability to envision, our ability to kind of move our consciousness into the future or to move into realms that are greater than physical reality, right? Because that's imagination. And imagination is an intuitive quality. It's a place where we meet our soul essence and we connect with something that is larger than our current reality, right? And it's a way we can receive information from whatever you want to say that it is. Like I like to say, I work with my guides, I work with my angels, I work with my own soul essence. And for you, it might just be like you're working with your inner being, like your deep inside creative muse, as Shiloh would say, right? Could just be working with that part of you. So imagination is that. It's this place where we can meet this kind of larger expression of who we are. And it can go south, right? It can go negative. Like if you allow for example, the fear of the spleen gates, which I talked about in the last video. And if you haven't seen it, you should really go and watch that one about the gates of the spleen and the fears that they create. Because when those fears get going, what happens is your imagination can get hijacked. Right? Your imagination can get hijacked so that you're starting to imagine all of these horrible things that can happen. And a lot of times, if you've got this fear of the past operating, you can go, oh, this thing happened in the past, or this thing happened to that other person even in the past. And so that might happen to me. And then you allow your imagination to be co-opted or colonized by this fear. And then your imagination starts creating all of these fear pictures. Now, when that happens, a lot of times we either go into the disempowered expression, right, of our imagination, which is like, oh no, and then that's can sometimes be where we want to get real logical again and real practical, because we're like, whoa, when I go into my imagination, it's a scary place. So I'm just going to get back to, what's really, I can, touch, right? I don't want to be out there, right? So that's one way to do it, is just to kind of reject it or be at the mercy of really negative fear pictures that you're creating. But the other thing that happens sometimes is because the fear pictures are going, then you can go into the shadow expression of imagination, which is where you're using your imagination to control or manipulate other people or others or situations, right? And so you're using that incredible creative power that you have, but it is locked into a power over paradigm. And so you're creating scenarios that are enabling you to gain power to yourself. So you got to watch out for that one. Whereas the awakened expression, the empowered expression, is when we use our imagination and we harness our passions. Let's skate 41. and gate 30, when we are able to gather that and harness it and then direct it to where we want it to go. So this is about creating, for example, possibilities for your life, that you're like, wow, my life could go this way, my life could go that way, my life could go this. Oh, those are all good. Which one feels best, right? And giving your energy to the one that feels best. But because it's also collective energy, it's about our imagining for our collective, right? And how do we imagine getting from where we are right now to where we want to be with a world that is more equitable, that is more regenerative, that is, is where we have a thriving ecosystem, right? And thriving people. And we've broken through the energy issue. We've learned how to not be polluting our air and our water and all of that, right? How do we get from here to there? Well, we can use our imaginations to do that. Right? We can generate our passion and our desire to help heal our world and heal ourselves and each other. So we can use our imaginations through that. That's what the course that I did recently in Thrutopia was all about. And I did do an interview with Amanda Scott about that. If you want to go, you can check out that interview with her, because it was all about Thrutopia and using our imaginations in this direction. Because unfortunately, our imaginations are often pretty co-opted by entertainment and Armageddon that we see. It's just like a lot of war, a lot of fighting, a lot of ways that people are just in conflict with each other. And so, how can we decolonize ourselves from that way of imagining, our lives and possibilities, and instead really employ it in a way that feels really good to us, right? Where we get inspired, we get motivated, we have this sense of expansion of possibilities. And so we do this for ourselves first, right? Ourselves, which is our kind of our individual relationship to it. And then for our families and our communities, which is kind of the more tribal aspect. But then this is, like I said, it's collective. So how do we imagine this for the collective? We've got imagination, we've got passion, we've got the energy for breaking through patterns of the past that don't work for us. We've got adventure and, really kind of engagement with life. This is joie de vivre. We've got, new ideas, new concepts coming in that are very, they're coming in through the right brain. So they're not logical necessarily, but they could be new concepts, new ways of seeing how things work. And then we've also got embodiment, beautiful embodiment coming in through the love of the body. And then we also have storytelling. Storytelling is a really big part of the sensing circuit. We have 3 different gates that are all different kinds of storytelling gates. And one of them is more personal. It has more to do with receiving oftentimes other people's stories, gate 13. I often say to people who have that defined in their chart, I'm like, do people like to confess to you? Like, I had this one conversation with a woman recently, and she was like, all the time. They always want to come and tell me things that they'll say they've never told anybody. So that's kind of the gate 13. And it is about being able to respect that energy and to receive from the person who's sharing it. But then it's also being able to reframe potentially the way somebody has seen it, or also to be able to create new stories that are more empowering, tapping into that kind of ability to break through the patterns of the past that are not helpful, and to retell it in a way that is helpful both for the individual and also for the collective. Now, the 33 is really that way because it's really about the big stories, if you will. It's about the stories about who we are really as a humanity, right? Even more than who we are as a tribe, right? Because a tribe can be pretty small. But the 33 is about the big, really how do we relate to ourselves, especially now that we're living on a global level, right? And one of the questions we want to ask is, how does my individual experience and my story about my life fit into larger narratives of historical development, for example? So in my academic work, for example, I looked a lot at the history of the United States, the literature and the culture of the United States, and how it was taught for a really long time, and it's still taught in some places in this way, and then how that intersects with my own personal experience and my perspective. So I'm a little bit different than a lot of people in that I'm white and I grew up in an African American neighborhood. And so I grew up with a certain awareness of the Black experience. Not that there's one, there are many, but what that's like that I think a lot of white people don't have. But to be a white person and to be a minority really gives you a different kind of perspective. And that has forever imprinted the way that I understand like the history and the literature and the culture of the United States, because I've always seen African American people as in the center of that. Not just like this kind of, oh yeah, by the way, there was slavery and then there wasn't. So we should all get over it, which is unfortunately the way the dominant narrative has kind of been. Same with Indigenous Americans. It's like, oh, there were some people and then a bunch of them died and they don't really matter anymore, right? That's the kind of dominant narrative. We're changing that, fortunately, right? We're changing that. We're starting to have a different narrative and a different way of understanding our history and our culture and our literature that understands that, African Americans have always been here. Indigenous Americans were here long before we were. And they all have made tremendous contributions to what we think of now as American culture, even though their contributions aren't necessarily always recognized or acknowledged or appreciated, right? So what we're collectively in right now is a reframing and a re-storytelling, if you will, of what our history is. That includes, definitely, indigenous people, many different tribal affiliations, and then Africans and African Americans, and then also, Chinese, and then, many other people of color from different parts of the world. Because, the United States has been a kind of melting pot for people with light skin, so that if you had light skin, you can kind of just become a white American, whatever your people were, right? But not so much for people of color. So we're in a place where, as we're moving into a more equitable, a more just, a more regenerated and regenerative culture, that we want to see how we are really in this world all with each other. And we're doing that with the purpose of understanding what is useful for us, right? How can we be in a human story that about the past that also includes new visions of the human story in all of its complexity going forward? Because I really believe that in order for us to have those Thrutopian visions and for us to be able to get to that world, we have to work with this situation. Like we really do. And the good news is that the storytelling gates in the sensing circuit are all about that, because it is somatic. We get to tap into the history that is actually written in the cells of our bodies, because the cells of our bodies remember all of this life, of this physical form, but we also have our epigenetics, which has been influenced by up to 14 different generations. And so the history is still happening inside of our form and inside of the cells of our body. And then in addition to that, we've got our soul journey, right? Which I don't think has been scientifically unpacked in terms of like our epigenetics. But I know in my experience as a breath worker, both personally and with, my clients, is that the memory of other lives is still with us too. So this is a somatic experience. It's not a logical left brain experience at all. Like it's not, you'd be like, wow, that's not rational. That's not, it's not. It's otherworldly. It's energetic. And it has to do with the imprints that we still have in the cells of the body from both our own lives, our ancestral lineage, and also our soul's journey. So the sensing circuit is the place where we can really get in touch with this, and we can update it, and we can heal the traumas of the past, and we can learn how to actually be in the world without fear, and we can learn to communicate and be with each other without so much fear, right? And develop this sense of being in it all together. And I've seen really the limitations of people's attempts to move forward into this new world without taking the body along, right? Trying to do it in a very rational and logical way. And it's very limited, right? I mean, it can work to an extent, but there's so much more that we really need. And let's remember that the sensing circuit goes through the emotional solar plexus. And so it's emotional also, right? There's a lot of emotional energy here. So it's our ability to feel our emotional energy, work with our emotional energy, work with the history that's embedded in the cells of our body, update the stories so that they are more aligned with our values of today, so that we can be able to move forward in an empowered way, and empowered in the sense of power within, so that I am not being colonized by fear, but then also power between and power among, right? Because this is really the paradigm for the future. You know, we've been living in a power over, power under paradigm for a long time. And so we're unwinding that. And so our stories can help us to understand how that's going to happen. Some of the ways that you can help get in touch with and open up this intelligence that you do have, even if you haven't fully expressed it, is through doing things like singing, toning, dancing, gesturing, doing like theater improv, doing playful games, really feeling through the body, experiencing through the body, doing different kinds of art, painting or crafting, working with clay, any kind of art that is not rational and not logical. It can be, you can use watercolors, you can use pastels, you can, work with just collaging. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can do that. And I went to a painting workshop, actually intentional creativity workshop, just this last weekend with the same woman who I originally learned this from. And it was extraordinary in that it was all about helping us to really open up that right brain creative energy and to be able to receive our own information. We were working with the healer archetype, and here's an example of my painting that I did, and it was extraordinary. And I've been spending the last few days, getting up and painting in the morning, and it's definitely working me, and it's definitely changing me, and I can feel the balance that's starting to come in because I've been really focused on doing a lot of work with a lot of left brain energy, and I knew I needed to balance that out. So things that are somatic. If you're an athlete or you like to go to the gym or you like to run or something like that, sure, you can do that. But things that are even more like, just loosening you up, just letting it go so that you're not tight, right? You're not just building more tightness by, doing muscle work at the gym, but you're actually bringing in more flow. And so that's why I say singing or dancing or gesturing or toning or theater improv is really good for that, because you have to be on your feet and you can't think. You have to just, to open that up. So you've been feeling a little dry in the creativity area or not fully in your body. I would really suggest that you do that, and to understand that intuition is going to channel through us when we're able to move that thinking mind out of the way. Doesn't mean your whole mind goes, because of course you're still using your mind, but you're moving that kind of verbal, really thinking, analytical part out of the way, so that then you can drop into your other intelligences, and the other intelligences come online. And of course, this is what we are seeking when we're meditating or journeying or looking to access the imaginal realm, doing dream work or visioning or anything like that, right? And so this is available to you. You may need to cultivate it. I know that I have, right? And I do. I purposefully put myself in situations that help me to cultivate that, because like I said, it's not something that I kind of have innately in me. I mean, I didn't know that until I learned my design, but now I see, oh yeah, okay. But I consider myself to be a very creative person. And before I started painting, I consider myself an artist of everyday life. And so my home was the place for my artistry, right? I would paint the walls of my home, or my cooking, or my gardening. There are so many different places where you can express your creativity You can get that kind of, thinking mind out of the way. And, one of the things that happened during this, the painting workshop, the creativity workshop that we did, was there was this point after everybody had kind of really dropped into their painting and they'd had a breakthrough, because there's an anxiety period that happens. But then when you break through that anxiety period and the painting starts to come into form, and it was like completely quiet in there and nobody wanted to stop because we'd all dropped in, right? And we were in a different type of consciousness and we could all feel it. And I know my other intentional creativity teacher, Sohaila Sellers, she used to be there, she's no longer with us, but she used to call it vertical time, because we're connecting this way, right? Not through horizontal time, where we're moving through the hours, the minutes, the hours, the days, right? We're in vertical time, where we're kind of stepped out of the regular time space continuum into something else. And that is a magical, magical thing. And I think that's why Karen Curry Parker has renamed it the Miracle Circuit, because it feels that way. It feels miraculous, partly because it's not logical and it's not reasonable, right? And we can't track it. We can't necessarily duplicate it, right? Not in that way. And so embrace the mystery, embrace the miracle, embrace the magic. And so I encourage you, to just go out and, take some time and really see where could you just open up some parts for yourself. Like I came back from that workshop and Shiloh had suggested, because I'm like, I don't have a room for an easel. She goes, yeah, just put the canvas on the wall. And I was like, oh my God, she's so right. So I have 2 canvases on my wall now, and I have this little painting station, and it's in my bedroom where I meditate. And I was like, oh. And just that one suggestion opened up all of this for me. So what's one suggestion that could open up things for you so that your creative life can really flourish? Because I can tell you, when you do that, watch out. Miracles will happen in your life. And if you enjoy these videos and you enjoy my work and my approach, I hope that you'll come and join us in the Becoming Sovereign Virtual Retreat Center, because we got some good stuff cooking up in there. We do live events and we have conversation going on, and there's curated courses for you that are already loaded in there. Right now, the main network is free. And so I really encourage you to come and join us if you'd like to connect more with me. I sure would like to meet you. All right. Many blessings. Much love.